Watch trays of shimmering desserts weaving through a noisy living room, where laughter mixes with music and the smell of cinnamon fills the air. There's a glistening green Jell-O mold on one table, a nutty fruitcake on another, and bowls of pastel marshmallow salad everywhere. What were the secret ingredients that made these treats so special back then? Why did they vanish? Can we really bring them back to life for a new generation of celebrations? Step into a memory. It's December, and the house is bursting at the seams. There's snow caked on the windows, the heat radiates from the kitchen and mingles with the icy smell from the front hall. Kids are stomping off boots, coats pile up on the bed, and the living room glows under colored lights. Every surface is crowded. Presents, puzzle pieces, mugs, napkins and, front and center, a massive table that's the final stop for every arrival. This is where the stories begin. Back then, the dessert spread was a wonderland. Trays groaned beneath clouds of hand-whipped cream balanced on pies, pecan, sweet potato, pumpkin that Grandma rolled, pinched, and filled herself. There were soaring towers of cookies, some pressed with thumbprints and jam, some dusted with powdered sugar from Grandma's secret tin. Shimmering Jell-O shapes quivered in the kitchen light. There were bowls of ambrosia with pastel marshmallows peeking out, and nut breads loaded with walnuts, pecans, sticky dates, or even tiny flecks of candied fruit. The only thing store-bought was the maraschino cherry, perched for color and fun on anything that needed a pop. What made these scenes unique was the sheer togetherness. Everything happened in a packed kitchen. Flour flying, hands helping, stories being retold louder and louder as more family poured in. The radio played Sinatra or the Beatles. You'd find cousins hunting for extra dough scraps to sneak, older folks reliving family legends, someone pretending not to notice the dog sniffing under the table. It was chaos and heart, tradition and invention, all swirling around one idea. Everyone belongs at the table, and everyone eats dessert. If you really listen, you can almost hear Grandma calling, "Stir gently, don't overmix," while someone else hums along to "Rockin' Around the Christmas Tree." The smell of cinnamon and toasted nuts fills the whole house, and the windows fog with laughter. Even the smallest details mattered, like the special plate reserved for Uncle Joe's favorite fruitcake, or the squeal of delight from the youngest cousin getting the first bite of warm cobbler, straight from the oven. Those old family recipes weren't just food, they were passports to memory, each bite loaded with nostalgia and family pride. Today, things can look and feel a bit different. The pandemic changed family gatherings for many fewer people in the room, more screens on the wall. Some families span thousands of miles, so FaceTime and Zoom join the party. Instead of 10 pies and towers of fudge, it might be one beautiful store-bought cheesecake or a batch of cookies from TikTok's latest viral recipe. A parent texts a group chat, "Should I bring the gluten-free brownies or the vegan pumpkin roll?" Kids snap photos before anyone touches the food, making sure every sprinkle and swirl ends up on Instagram or in group texts. There's still laughter, but there's also Alexa setting timers in the background, and playlists picking the music instead of Grandpa's old radio dial. Even the flavors have shifted. Where we once craved the deep spice of molasses, cloves, or rum-soaked fruitcake, many tables today skip the heavy stuff for lighter, trendier desserts. Think peppermint bark, caramel apple dips, or vegan chocolate mousse. People make chia seed puddings, international-inspired desserts like French macarons or Japanese mochi in bright, unexpected flavors. There are fruit boards, cheese boards, and even dessert hummus now making regular appearances. Instead of the dense, sticky sweets, we see crisp, cool, and colorful. And picture how the whole dessert reveal has changed. Instead of Grandma carrying in her famous chocolate roll with flour still dusted on her apron, you might watch a sibling peel the plastic off a bakery cake while saying, "Saw this on Instagram, had to try it." Where there was once a flurry to find matching pie plates, now it's about arranging mini desserts in rainbow order or editing a boomerang for your story. Some families put out both, an heirloom cake and a trend-setting treat, just to see which one disappears first. What's behind all these changes? Part of it comes down to time. Most families don't have an entire day, or even a full afternoon, to devote just to desserts. With jobs, school, and a million after-school tasks, recipes that used to take 3 hours now have to fit into a spare 30 minutes. Grocery stores answer this call, offering every kind of pie and pastry in ready-to-go boxes. If your great-aunt used to make a 3-layer German chocolate cake, you might find her grandkids grabbing a frozen version and tossing on some whipped cream. It's not a lack of love, it's just different priorities. Economics play a big role too. Have you seen the price of pecans lately? Or real vanilla? Homemade desserts from the 60s and 70s were rich for a reason, but today that richness can mean sticker shock at the store. That's led to people getting creative, cutting down old recipes, switching to cheaper ingredients, or only making classics for the biggest, most important gatherings of the year. Some families have kept their baking traditions by making bake swaps, where each person brings one big batch to share, spreading the work and the cost across everyone. But it's not just about money and hours. Food trends have always driven what we serve. The move toward health-conscious eating has changed dessert trays, sometimes even at Christmas. You'll spot gluten-free cake pops or nut-free cookies so everyone feels safe. Families play with sugar-free swaps or try to sneak more fruit into every plate. And beyond allergies or diets, there's a curiosity. Kids and adults alike keep discovering new international treats, then trying them out at home. What used to be the same pies every year is now anyone's guess. And let's not forget the joy of sharing favorites across generations, sometimes with hilarious results. Picture a teenager handing over avocado brownies, saying, "Try it, Grandpa. You won't believe it's healthy." Or an aunt daring everyone to taste her gingerbread that uses oat flour instead of wheat. Sometimes there are debates. You call this eggnog? Or where's the old bundt cake? And sometimes, amidst groans and giggles, a new family favorite is born. Yet that magic of tradition doesn't quite disappear, no matter how much things change. People look back and remember the old marzipan fruits, or how everyone wanted the recipe for Aunt Edie's chocolate roll. Or that time Grandpa braved the kitchen and set the figgy pudding on fire, carefully, with everyone cheering him on. Some families still use faded 3x5 cards, gravy stains and all, to resurrect a piece of the past. Others reinvent the wheel. Maybe the Jell-O salad comes back in classy glass cups instead of a bundt pan. Or the ambrosia gets a tropical reboot with mango and coconut. Some moments might seem small, but they stick with us. Like the sound of knives clinking on dessert plates and the soft murmur of you've got to try this. Or the wide-eyed wonder when a little one asks, "Will you show me how to make these next year?" Every gathering knits together old memories and new ones. Whether you're passing down a top-secret fudge recipe or teaching someone to search Pinterest for the perfect gluten-free shortbread. Even the way we connect over dessert has morphed in a fast-paced world. Maybe no one's rolling 3 dozen cookies by hand anymore. But togetherness looks like everyone baking at the same time in different homes, laughing over a group video call, comparing results in real time. The spirit of the old days, sharing, showing up, celebrating, finds a new home with every bite, even if that bite now comes from a gluten-free matcha-dusted mochi. Tradition isn't about the recipe being perfect. It's about creating something special for loved ones, even if that means swapping Jell-O for cookie butter cheesecake from the store. The big question is, with all these changes, what happened to those wild, unforgettable desserts from the 60s and 70s? Did they really vanish forever? Or did they just slip into hiding, waiting for the right moment to make us smile again? Let's dig deeper into the sweet secrets behind yesterday's iconic holiday desserts and see what stories are still waiting to be told. It's Christmas Eve, and the dining room table is a kaleidoscope of color, glimmering Jell-O domes in cherry red, lime green, and orange, shimmering in the soft glow of colored bulbs. Every aunt and cousin leans close, pointing out which dessert they want first. There's laughter as a silver knife presses through creamy, cloud-like layers of ambrosia, and someone tries to recall if walnut bread should be buttered or eaten plain. These were the showstoppers, the desserts that made every 60s and 70s holiday party feel magical. What exactly made them so special? Let's take a trip back and see. At every family table, one thing always grabbed your eyes first: the Jell-O mold. These weren't just snacks, they were art. Some molds stood tall, swirling with strips of opaque and transparent layers, while others sat low and wide, encasing fruit cocktail pieces that looked like hidden gems in a glassy sea. You'd see Jell-O salads with pineapples, mandarin oranges, and sometimes oddly tiny marshmallows or cottage cheese. Unmolding these creations was an event. The anticipation, the tilted plates, the collective gasp as the shape slid out, sometimes clean, sometimes with a splat. Grandma might say, "Let's hope it's not a disaster." As everyone waited with nervous excitement, aspics made an appearance too, especially when adults were feeling fancy. These gelatin-based, often savory, and sometimes questionable concoctions combined veggies, canned shrimp, or olives in a shining, wobbly ring. They looked spectacular but were, let's be honest, an acquired taste. Still, they were part of the fun, adding suspense and a little comic relief to the dessert table. And the pride some folks took in their Jell-O artistry, it was real. There's the story of Aunt Jean, who tried to capture the American flag in a patriotic 4th of July mold, red berry, creamy white, and blue blueberry layers. It was the talk of the cookout, even if the layers bled together a bit. Or Grandpa's infamous tomato aspic, which he insisted was a gourmet palate cleanser. Kids would dare each other to take a bite, then dash for the nearest napkin. The Jell-O mold was more than dessert. It was an adventure and, just as often, a punchline. Then there was the classic holiday fruitcake. With a reputation for being, well, dense and enduring, some say they never go stale. These loaves were a labor of love, each one packed with candied fruit, golden raisins, chopped pecans, walnuts, and maybe a splash of bourbon or brandy. Baking them was a huge deal, the whole house filled with that sweet, spiced aroma of cinnamon and cloves. There were jokes it's heavy enough to use as a doorstop. But year after year, people still reached for a slice, daring each other to go back for seconds if Grandma was looking. And if it was homemade, passed down with pride, you just couldn't say no. Nut breads, banana loaves, and date bars graced every family's spread. Each was a little different, holding traces of family history. Maybe a note on an old recipe card, try adding orange zest. Or don't forget to dust with sugar. Cutting into them was like opening a time capsule, and the eating was even better. Crunchy on top, soft on the inside, deep with the flavors of nuts and fruit. Warmed in the oven, they filled bellies and memories. Sometimes, families would pass out recipe cards at the table, scribbled with tips like soak the raisins overnight for extra plumpnesses or swap pecans for hazelnuts if you want a twist. It felt like joining a secret club, a little piece of history shared with each bite. Even kids would help measure flour or stir batter. Hands dusted with flour, faces glowing with anticipation. Aunt Linda might say, "Don't forget, my banana nut bread wins blue ribbons every year," sparking a spirited debate over whose loaf was actually the softest. Then, the ambrosia salad. A burst of color and texture. Fluffy whipped cream or Cool Whip. Canned mandarin oranges, sweet coconut, maraschino cherries, pineapple tidbits, and mini marshmallows, all tossed together in a sweet, tangy cloud. As a kid, the pastel colors made it look like dessert from a fairy tale. Grandma always heaped a mountain on everyone's plate, and parents pretended it was sort of healthy because of all the fruit. The flavor, citrusy, creamy, and impossible to forget. Watching people build their perfect ambrosia bite is half the fun. Uncle Jerry would pick out extra cherries, while cousins might dig for marshmallows. Every family had their own version, some skipping coconut, others adding grapes, a few tossing in slivered almonds for crunch. It was a conversation starter. No grapes, just marshmallows. Or, where's the coconut? That's the best part. Some families went all out. Maybe they threw in a trifle, those gorgeous layered desserts with pound cake, custard, berries, and clouds of whipped cream, served in a glass bowl to show off every layer. Or perhaps there'd be a chocolate roll cake, sometimes called a Yule log, dusted with powdered sugar snow, and decorated with little meringue mushrooms for a finishing flourish. Of course, cookies ruled the day. Spritz cookies squeezed through a star-shaped press, gingerbread men with cinnamon buttons, sugar cookies loaded with colored frosting, and Russian tea cakes that powdered your whole shirt. The kitchen table was assembly central, everyone piping, sprinkling, sneaking samples. Sometimes, an old-school fudge would sneak onto the tray, rich with cocoa and cream, cut into thick squares you could barely finish. And the sights and smells, they were unforgettable. The kitchen would be warm and steamy from the oven, sugar and cinnamon in the air, holiday music playing in the background. Laughter floated from room to room as someone inevitably dropped a cookie, or a marshmallow bounced off the table. Even the family dog would hover nearby, hoping for crumbs. Holidays were noisy, joyful, a bit chaotic, and those desserts were at the center of it all. These classics were more than just food. They were tradition, a link to every Christmas past, a reason for cousins to squabble over who got the last piece, and a family's best excuse to gather long after dinner was done. Even now, those old flavors can spark memories. A whiff of cinnamon, a sight of jiggling Jell-O, a taste of nutty banana bread. People talk about the time Aunt Rose's aspic slid off the plate, or how no one but Grandpa liked the black walnut fudge. But every year, those desserts came back strong. Curious how to bring some of these back? For a quick Jell-O update, use fresh fruit instead of canned. And layer flavors for a modern twist, try berry lemonade or orange mango. If you're brave enough to attempt fruitcake, play with smaller loaves, or turn it into cupcakes for faster baking and sharing. Swap Cool Whip for real whipped cream and ambrosia salad, or add toasted coconut for extra crunch. You can even go mini, serve classics in tiny cups for a bit of vintage flair without the scary portions. Want to make it even more fun? Ask relatives about their own dessert stories. You might get Grandpa sharing about the eggnog custard his mother made on the farm, or hear your mom laughing about her first attempt at rainbow gelatin when she was a kid. I didn't know you had to let every layer set, so it just turned kinda brown and soupy. What do people say when they taste these again? Some reactions are priceless. Kids stare at the Jell-O mold, poking it, giggling at the wobble. It's like jiggly magic, says one. Grown-ups get wide-eyed with nostalgia. Oh wow, I haven't had this since I was 6. Sometimes, there's confusion. Did people really eat these every year? But once the flavors hit, even skeptics admit there's something comforting in these sweet, old-school treats. It's like eating a memory. Someone whispers. And just like that, the table feels a little more full. Yet, for every showstopper, there's always one more question. What about those even stranger desserts? The ones you always heard about, maybe even dreaded. The oddballs of holidays past? Well, get ready. The quirkiest treats are just around the corner, and you might be surprised by which ones people secretly love. Pull up a chair, because it's time to tackle the oddballs, the desserts that made kids giggle and grown-ups groan, the sweet and salty experiments of holidays gone by. If you grew up during the 60s or 70s, you probably saw these at least once. A curiosity, a dare, a talking point all rolled into one. Let's start with the classic marshmallow salads, sometimes called fluff desserts or simply the white stuff in the big bowl. These were sweet, sticky, and impossible to ignore. Picture a giant glass bowl piled high with pastel marshmallows, crushed pineapple, shredded coconut, and sour cream or whipped topping. Sometimes both. There could be canned fruit, nuts, or even a dash of lemon-lime soda for fizz. You'd scoop it onto your plate, and it would ooze slowly, leaving behind a sticky trail. Some kids went wild for it, while others eyed it with suspicion. Is this dessert or a weird salad? Someone would ask, debating if they were brave enough for seconds. But marshmallow salad was just the start of the quirky dessert parade. These bowls would sparkle under the kitchen lights, shaped by whatever vintage Tupperware or glass bowl your aunt owned. The marshmallows, softening and half melting into the cream, swirled color into the glossy sea of fluff. At big family get-togethers, you could count on a cousin daring another to eat the biggest, goopiest spoonful. Grandma might laugh, then remind everyone that this was the fanciest you could get when I was a girl. The air would fill with the gentle scent of coconut and something tangy, the kind of smell that signaled a holiday was really here. Then there were the Jell-O molds that really pushed the limit. Sure, there was the classic orange with mandarin slices, but what about the recipes that called for vegetables, seafood, or even hot dogs? Picture a ring of green Jell-O, filled with grated carrots, chopped celery, and slivers of pimento stuffed olives. One that still gets talked about, shrimp suspended in lemon gelatin, or even a gelatin salad made with cottage cheese, pineapple, and a sprinkle of crushed potato chips on top. The look on people's faces when it hit the table? Equal parts wonder, confusion, and a dash of horror. I thought that was dessert, not dinner. More than one guest would exclaim. It's easy to laugh now, but back then, Jell-O molds were the ultimate showstopper. You could hear the gasp around the table as the mold wobbled onto a platter, jiggling with every step. Kids would stare at the shimmering colors, poking at the sides to see if it would bounce. Does it smell like fruit? Or just green? And there was always someone brave, or maybe just really hungry, willing to be the first to slice in, releasing a soft tang of something unexpected. Let's not forget those wild sweet and savory combos, the blends that made your tongue do a double take. There was the infamous tomato aspic, a wobbly crimson mold dotted with diced celery, onion, and sometimes green pepper. Some grew up loving the tangy, salad-like taste, especially when paired with a dollop of mayonnaise or sour cream. Others, well, their grimace said it all. Then you had pineapple cheese balls, cheddar cheese mixed with crushed pineapple, rolled in nuts and served cold. Was it an appetizer? A dessert? The answer, yes. It was both, and sometimes neither, but always talked about long after the last bite. Sometimes, preparing these quirky desserts felt almost ceremonial. Imagine the kitchen. The whir of electric mixers, the pop of a can opener, the bright fruits draining over the sink. Someone's carefully folding tiny marshmallows into mounds of whipped topping, licking the spoon quickly before anyone sees. Mom's flipping through a sun-faded cookbook, brow furrowed, double-checking whether it was 2 cans of fruit cocktail or just one. A radio hums in the background, and now and then, there's laughter as kids sneak a marshmallow and run away. Families have their own legends about these creations. My grandma made lime Jell-O with cottage cheese and pineapple every Christmas, and you had to take a scoop or she'd be offended, one story goes. Another remembers a neighbor's seafoam salad, lime or mint green, billowing with whipped topping and marshmallows, sometimes with canned pears folded in. The texture was odd, the flavor light, and the look unforgettable. Some desserts even became infamous. Remember the Spam mousse? It's a punchline now, but for one holiday season in the 70s, it was the star attraction, once and never again. Of course, not all of these oddballs were flops. Some earned a spot in family lore. Kids might look forward to the yearly arrival of Watergate salad, a mix of pistachio pudding, marshmallows, canned pineapple, and walnuts. The name alone sparked curiosity and giggles. Or maybe someone's mom always made divinity, a pure white, melt-in-your-mouth candy, pillowy and cloud-like, but tricky enough to cause tears if the weather was too humid. And let's not underestimate how adventurous these cooks were. Back in the day, a new dessert wasn't just about satisfying your sweet tooth. It was about making an impression, about surprising the in-laws or giving the kids something to talk about at school the next day. Aunt June might unfurl a glossy page from a magazine, jab her finger at a new recipe and say, "We're making this." No one was really sure how it would turn out, but that was half the excitement. Would it become a family favorite, or just a one-time story to tell at every future holiday? To really bring these stories home, we tried resurrecting one forgotten oddball. Behold, the infamous carrot-pineapple Jell-O mold. Here's how it went. Shredded carrots, crushed pineapple, lemon gelatin, and a scattering of walnuts into a mold, then left in the fridge to set. When it came out, it looked clean and glossy, with bright orange flecks and juicy yellow bits. First taste test, someone bravely scooped a bite, eyebrows high. It's crunchy and sweet, kinda weird, but also not bad. Another called it the love child of dessert and salad. Confession, a few folks went back for seconds, just to be sure, laughing as they debated if they should post it online. Was it an overnight hit? Maybe not, but it made for a memory. These odd desserts told another story too. In the 60s and 70s, cookbooks and homemaker magazines encouraged creativity and everything in a mold thinking. New packaged foods hit the shelves every month, promising fast, fun, no-fuss desserts. So home cooks said, why not? And pushed the boundaries, sometimes finding a winner, sometimes creating a holiday legend you'd never forget, even if you wanted to. And you know, the more you dig around in family recipe cards and faded newspaper clippings, the clearer it gets. These aren't just strange foods. They're time capsules. There's a kind of bravery and love wrapped up in those old Jell-O molds, a willingness to try something new, even if the results had everyone whispering under their breath. Spoons clinking against colorful bowls, grandpas pretending not to wince, little kids rolling weird flavors over their tongues. It all adds up to memories that last longer than any recipe ever could. Hearing family stories today, there's always a smile, a groan, or I can't believe we used to eat that. It's part of how the holidays pull us together. Everyone has a tale about the dish they loved, or the one they steered clear of, grinning with relief that some trends stayed in the past. Some modern cooks have started bringing back the oddballs, partly for laughs, partly for curiosity, and just maybe, to taste a bit of the magic their grandparents knew. And maybe, just maybe, you're brave enough to bring one back and see what happens at your table this year. But with all these wild and weird creations, one mystery stands out. Why, after decades of love, and sometimes rum, did these desserts vanish? Who decided a carrot Jell-O salad was out, and fudge brownies were here to stay? The answer's as layered as a trifle. Let's dig in and find out what really happened. Take a step back and look around. If the dessert trays of the 60s and 70s were overflowing with creativity, color, and the occasional oddball, where did they all go? Why aren't we jiggling Jell-O salads and slicing dense fruitcakes as often? The truth is, a whole stack of trends and twists led to their quiet exit from the spotlight. And the story's as complicated as Grandma's secret ingredient list. Start with health and nutrition. By the late 1970s and especially into the 80s, the way we thought about food shifted big time. Doctors and magazines were shouting about the dangers of fat, cholesterol, sugar, and mysterious additives. Suddenly, light, low-fat, and sugar-free were buzzwords. Diet books flew off shelves. Families started swapping butter for margarine, sugar for artificial sweeteners, and some desserts just didn't fit into this new picture. Those once beloved fruitcakes felt too rich, the aspics too odd, the marshmallow-laden salads a little too sweet. "Are you sure that's good for you?" became a common refrain, and fewer hands reached for second helpings. Picture a holiday table in 1982. Uncle Larry, eyeing the rainbow Jell-O mold, leans over and whispers, "That stuff's pure sugar, isn't it?" Aunt Brenda sighs and says, "I'm only making these fudge bars with the new Sweet and Low this year." A whole family shifts without even realizing. Each year, the choices become a little more careful, less carefree. Then there's the recipe problem. A lot of favorites relied on someone knowing how to make them, with notes and tips that rarely made it into cookbooks. Maybe it was Grandma's perfectly timed fruitcake, or Aunt June's magical way of unmolding a Jell-O ring without breaking it. As older cooks grew older or moved on, the next generation, busy, mobile, eager for new things, didn't always have time to collect those recipes, or even the interest to try. And truthfully, some were so tied to those individual cooks that nobody could really capture the magic in a new kitchen. As a result, the binders of handwritten cards and newspaper clippings got tucked away, or lost. There's something bittersweet about flipping through an old recipe box. You find an index card, stained and curling at the edges, with directions like bake until golden, don't forget what I taught you. No precise oven temp. No explanation for the mysterious ingredient labeled just yellow. It's like a secret code, only half remembered. And if you didn't watch someone do it, you're left guessing. Convenience was another big game changer. The 1960s and 70s were already an era of new products: boxed cake mixes, pudding mixes, instant whips. But the 80s and 90s kicked it into overdrive. Grocery stores started carrying ready-to-go desserts that looked beautiful and tasted good enough without all the fuss. Why spend half a day making dough, melting chocolate, waiting for the Jell-O to set, when you could just grab a cheesecake from the freezer section or call the bakery? Even the semi-homemade trend grew. Mix the boxed mix with your favorite nuts or fruit and call it special. Imagine walking down a bright humming supermarket aisle in 1996. The cold air seeps from the freezer section as you pass layers of perfectly frosted cakes and cream pies. There's a kind of quiet relief. No more worrying about burned crusts or goopy pudding. Just a quick swipe of a credit card, and dessert's done. Kids waiting in the car can barely peek over the bag at the store-bought brownies, grinning because they're all the same size, perfectly chewy, never overbaked. The world sped up, and with it, our appetite for slow, tricky desserts shrank. People spent less time in kitchens and more time at work, at school, or running to a million activities. The holiday gatherings shrank too, sometimes by necessity, sometimes by choice. Suddenly, you didn't need 3 pies, 2 cakes, and 5 kinds of cookies for 8 people. You just needed something sweet and simple to end the night. But here's the thing. Sometimes, those fast options meant more time for memories outside the kitchen. Consider the story from Nancy, who remembers her mother laboring over cherry pie for hours. When Mom switched to store-bought, she finally had time to help us decorate the tree. Now, I actually remember the laughter more than the pie. It wasn't all about time and nutrition, though. Tastes were changing. Big time. As the world opened up and global flavors poured into grocery stores and neighborhoods, new dessert ideas grabbed our attention. Why stick with carrot-laden Jell-O when you could try cardamom cookies, baklava, or tiramisu? Families traveled, TV cooking shows zoomed in popularity, and suddenly, you could learn about brownies from America, churros from Spain, or mochi from Japan. People started picking what sounded fun, new, and potentially Instagram-worthy, and left the old standards behind. Even the look of desserts changed. Think about those glossy food magazines and flashy TV spots in the 90s and early 2000s. Suddenly, everything had swirling sauces and perfect tiny garnishes. Compare that to the wobbly Jell-O towers and sticky pudding mounds of the past. Food got fancier, more beautiful, easier to snap a photo of and show off to your friends. Advertising and media shaped a lot of this. Ads in the 60s and 70s put Jell-O and instant pudding front and center. Every magazine had a bright, happy family slicing a Technicolor gelatin ring. Later, the commercials shifted to ice cream cakes, bakery pies, or the latest healthier option. TV chefs taught everyone how to make brownies, blondies, and no-bake cheesecakes in minutes. Even the packaging changed. What used to be a special occasion item was now available year-round, reducing its wow factor. Sometimes, change was about making holidays easier, not less magical. Take the story of Jill, who remembers her mom making 3 kinds of Christmas bread just because her own grandmother had done it before her. After moving across the country, Jill realized her new city had a bakery that sold all 3 loaves better than she could make at home. She still buys them every year, lights a candle, and shares slices with her family. But now she does it without collapsing in flour, and with more time to read stories to her kids. The tradition became about togetherness, not the exact recipe. Not every dessert could make the leap to the present. Let's be real. Some of those old flavors lost their appeal. Kids and bro voted with their taste buds, and not every coconut fluff or green aspic survived. When families tried to hand down the tradition, there were times the new generation just, said no. Or at least, gave the old family favorite a polite try before asking for a cupcake. Picture the annual family reunion. Everyone gathered around the dessert table. Someone tentatively slices into bright green gelatin, dotted with canned fruit, while the kids inch toward a tray of simple sugar cookies instead. Grandma laughs, remembering, we used to fight over who got the cherries. Times and taste buds change. Even so, there are little sparks of the past in today's treats. Jelly shots at holiday parties? A throwback to Jell-O molds. Cheesecakes with citrus and coconut? A nod to old ambrosia bowls. Moist, sticky rum cakes, still making a comeback thanks to food blogs and holiday bake-offs. Plus, bakeries and restaurants are starting to bring some nostalgia back. Think layered trifles popping up at hip cafes, or classic lemon bars getting a trendy twist with sea salt and fresh berries. And every so often, someone uncovers a decades-old recipe on social media, tries it for the first time, and says, "Hey, this is pretty awesome." Suddenly you'll see retro recipes trending on TikTok or Instagram, as a new generation puts its own spin on what grandma once made. It's a cycle, really. Old favorites get shelved, new favorites take center stage, then someone opens a drawer years later and finds a recipe card that starts the whole thing rolling again. Maybe a TikTok challenge dares everyone to make a wacky Jell-O salad. Or a magazine promises, fruitcake is finally cool again. And sometimes, at a potluck or family gathering, someone bravely brings out a classic, just to see what stories come with the first bite. So here's what's next. How do we celebrate and revive these traditions in a way that fits our lives today? If dessert is about more than just sugar, if it's about belonging, memory, laughter, then there has to be a way to bring the best of the past into now. Let's find out how you can lead the charge to put a little vintage magic back on your holiday table. So here's where it gets personal. We've traveled through decades of laughter, sticky fingers, and wild kitchen experiments. We've dug up the gooey marshmallow salads, the towering layers of Jell-O, and the nut breads your great-uncle swore by. Now it's your turn to bring that magic back, or to start something totally new that's all your own. If you're watching this, you probably have your own family dessert legend. Maybe it's that one recipe card with a coffee ring in the corner, or the faded memories of an aunt whisking batter so fast you'd swear it was magic. These stories matter. They're the sweet glue that binds together a family, or even a whole group of friends around a table. It's easy to let these things slip away, especially in a world that moves faster every year. But a single tray of homemade fudge or an old-school ambrosia salad can change a whole day, turning a regular dinner into a small, shared miracle. So I want to hear from you. What's the dessert that makes your holiday truly special? Is it that crazy pineapple cheese ball from the 70s? The mysterious black walnut fudge Grandpa made once and never again? Or maybe, just maybe, the Jell-O salad you pretended not to like, but always snuck a spoonful of anyway? Drop your story in the comments below. Let's see what wild, wonderful, or weird recipes are still out there. I guarantee you're not alone. And maybe your story will spark a sweet revival at someone else's table. Here's a little challenge for you. Take just one dessert from your past, from this video, your family, or even a friend's house, and bring it to your next holiday gathering. Don't worry if it's not Instagram ready. Don't panic if your marshmallow salad leans to the left or your fruitcake cracks. Just make it, serve it up, and watch what happens. I bet you'll get stories you've never heard, memories pouring out of cousins, maybe even a few new fans. You might even create a family tradition starting right here, right now. If you do, share a photo and tag our channel. Let's fill the world with proof that dessert traditions can come roaring back, one table at a time. To help spark your inspiration, let me share one of my favorite stories I recently heard from a viewer named Lisa. Last year, Lisa recreated her grandmother's Cherry Delight bars for Thanksgiving. As she carried the tray into the dining room, the scent of almond extract and bright cherries instantly took her mom back to her childhood kitchen. "You used to beg for the corner piece," her mom teased, and soon everyone was laughing and swapping stories about dessert mishaps from years past. That's the magic we're talking about. It's not just about sugar and flour. It's about stirring up memories and making new ones right there at the table. Another viewer, Marcus, once wrote in about trying to make his family's mysterious moonbeam pie. The recipe was barely a scrap of paper and had some confusing steps. But after a couple of hilarious kitchen fails, He finally got it right. When he brought it to the family reunion, the whole room fell silent with the first bite, jaws dropping as forgotten flavors came rushing back. "I felt like I'd unlocked a part of our family history," he told us. That's the kind of power hidden in these old desserts. Remember, reviving these classics isn't about perfection. It's about giving people a little piece of themselves back, a taste of something they didn't even know they'd been missing. When you open a tin of spice cookies or slice into a glowing orange Jell-O ring, you're reaching across generations, saying, "Hey, you mattered, and you still do." Think about the faces gathered around, smiling, curious, maybe even getting a little emotional when a childhood taste returns for just a moment. That's the real power of dessert, and it's always been the sweetest part of any holiday. So, stick around, because next time, we're diving even deeper. We'll uncover rare and almost forgotten dessert recipes, some hidden in old cookbooks, some whispered about at old church potlucks, dusting off flavors you've never even heard of. Get ready to add a little mystery to your kitchen and maybe discover your next family favorite. So keep your mixers ready and your memories close. Who knows what lost treasures are waiting for you to bring them back to life?